everybody, I'm Carson.
Hey, Brandon.
We're going to look today at a category rather than a specific piece, like a category I've collected. I really enjoy comics that use the comic page or the panels to imply like moving through dimensions, some kind of sense of moving through a higher dimension. So here's an example from McKelvey and Kieran Gillen's Young Avengers, where they're stepping out of the panel borders and into the gutter, just to imply moving up into a higher dimension or outside the bounds of a dimension. I think the same thing is going on in this Shade the Changing Girl. Like the character is stepping through these different spaces to different times in the character's life, different
That's
places.
Very similar. Yeah, that one's Marley Zarcone. This makes me think of, have you read the, I'm going to space on the artist's name, but the Alan Moore, I think it's his Necronomicon book.
I've read that, his H.P. Lovecraft thing.
Yeah, I was thinking there's a scene in that. It's a really weird one where the woman gets impregnated by the weird Cthulhu monster in the sex club pool or whatever.
Oh, the first of the two. Yeah, that one's kind of gross.
Is it Neonomicon? Yeah, it's really gross. I will say that's the only time that I've seen. I might. Everyone in the world might disagree with me, but that's the only time that I've read an Alan Moore book that has sexual violence that I think it needed to have it for the story to happen. And every other time, I'm just like, they could have left that out.
He does seem to enjoy that.
Yeah, it's the least entertaining part of his work for me, obviously. But he in that one, he did this really cool trick where he shows a mural and it's shown in perspective where you're seeing it from the side. It looks like if you're looking at a mural from the side, but then he points towards it and the characters walk into the mural. And I thought it was kind of another way, kind of outside of comics, to do the same trick. Yeah, it's such a crossed Avatar style book.
Yeah, it is a weird, everything he did for Avatar was kind of overly gross. I do remember this book being very interested in we don't need to look at those pages. I do remember this book feeling very much about panel, containment within the panels. So it makes sense that the character would walk through a space. I don't know. I'll have to go search that out and find it. But I've always enjoyed this strategy. I don't think it's these days. I don't think it's anything new. I think this has been done quite a bit, but I've always liked it. And I think comic artists tend to think in these terms of in terms of dimensions. And Alan Moore definitely makes this mistake, I think, with his philosophy of life. Grant Morrison did it in The Filth. There's a lot of, it's very easy as a comic artist to make the assumption that there's this two-dimensional reality that we're in control of, like gods. And if those characters could only break out, this is a joke, Canona's from Dial H for Hero. Mm-hmm. If you can break out of that two-dimensional reality and come on top, that's the Alan Moore thing, that you could see the reality from above, and then he'll always use that as an analogy for time. If you could break out of time and see our reality from above, that you could kind of read it like a comic book or something. And I've always enjoyed how people did that in comics, but I've also always thought it's a really weird idea of dimensions, because to me, a dimension is a filter that you're putting on reality. There's a bunch of raw, uninterpreted data, and then a dimension is just the way you filter something. So to me, if you break out of a dimension, you're taking a filter off and you would see less, it would be less processed. So it's always interesting to me when artists take it.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. There's certainly an element of it that almost, it feels like it shrinks the universe a little bit for me. As soon as you show someone being I'm in a comic book, then it almost kills the suspension of belief or suspension of disbelief that the reader has.
Yeah, and do you buy into the analogy it's making, where it's our reality is the same thing, and there's some potential that we could we could like step outside of our reality, break through the panel, move into the gutter.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, it's hard to put that on our reality. I think your idea of it is more in line with mine, where you're just seeing through the filter, and the panels aren't important. It's just a way for you to interpret time, because without the breaking down, it would just look like the reality we're in. And if you pulled back without the panels, you would just see, a mess of time all tied together.
Yeah, and I've always found it interesting that people who do comics, this seems to be a very popular view, because it's almost like we all spend too much time in this godlike position, hovering above the page and manipulating the panels, and so it's like very easy to sell us on that view of reality.
Yeah.
So it's a formalist trick that I've always enjoyed looking at, and I've always thought it's always made me think a lot about the implications for creators and the dangerous position that being a creator puts you in.
Yeah, certainly. But it also makes me think that, I think for me, it breaks the lie. Like, I think you have to lie to yourself a little bit to make, to pretend that a flat object is three-dimensional space and draw it. Like when you're drawing in perspective, I often will think like, like you almost feel like if you draw faraway trees, you're like, this is way back here. And then I'm going to draw something in the foreground. And even when I'm talking about it, I'll move my hand closer or farther away, because I'm lying to myself that there's distance on a flat plane. And I think paneling works that way for me. I'll totally lie to myself and be like, this is a different scene than this scene. And that kind of crawling over panels, it's just like, I don't want to think about that or believe that, because I have to believe the fantasy to even make it.
And yeah, I think I tell my students that all the time, that drawing is lying.
Sure.
And like it's weird. I guess maybe that's what's weird to me about this formalism in particular, or this genre of formalism, is it seems like the creator are starting to believe their own lie.
Yeah, or I would say they're not believing their lie enough. They're forgetting the lie.
Yeah, they're starting to take it as like this is the nature of reality or something, and like buying into it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in how many of the examples you have are writers coming up with the concept and the visual artist having to draw it, because I wonder if there's a disconnect there where a writer will be thinking about it. They don't have to live the lie as much. That's the name of your thing, by the way. It's living the lie.
Living the lie. Yeah, I wonder. There's let's go back to the folder here. This is what's this book called? I forget. This is a really good book. This is one where I know for a fact that the writer and the artist are the same person.
The same being melded in a fly transportation machine. I really like the way that the time is broken up with the where are you in that.
Blue. I think that's the artist's name. Yeah. Oh, Human Star. I'm pretty sure that's from.
Okay, I've read that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where I got that one from. Just because I wanted to recommend that book to people. Yeah, this one seems more about time, right? Piecemealing time up in an interesting way. This one, though, because you were talking about how much of this is the writer, this was a recent one from JLA Dark, and Constantine is like saying that they need to get into the reality of the story, and he says, okay, and he starts writing the script, pages 2 and 3. And then on this double page spread, we're going to try something cool and weird. The page has no background. Instead, we're going to put a copy of the text from his script onto the page of the background. And then the characters basically walk into the script.
Jeez, my first reaction is like, just put a photo of yourself jerking off, because that's what this is.
I mean, it's interesting. And again, it's that Alan Moore view of what magic is, and I think similar to Dave too, that you can write things in and out of reality through comics. But it is very much, because you said, I wonder how much of this is a writer, it does feel like a writer's trick, and this is a really good example of that.
I almost wish the text was like, am I a genius, ? But I actually
Sorry.
really like that technique of the seeing all the characters on there. Are the characters the same? Yeah, I really like the panelist thing of how you can see like Constantine moving from thing to thing, from section of it to section, and you don't need the borders there. Like I feel like a lesser, or at least a less interesting page would have it blocked off with borders to tell you which one was which. And I like that they didn't do that here.
That's something that you've talked about before, that you don't like that. What is that? You just think like it's not trusting the audience enough, basically?
Yeah, it's not trusting the audience, and it feels a little bit too like, have you ever read comics where they number the panels, like Winsor McKay used to do that? I feel like there's a yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lack of faith in yourself even.
So you had brought it up in a previous one. We
Oh,
had
right.
looked at this one, and this is an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, like I think this page would be served without the panel borders a lot better.
Yeah, that one I think has another reason for it. This is a good example, again, from the Young Avengers, of like stepping outside of not just the dimension, but stepping out of the dimension of time. And now they're walking around looking at like the entire series previously. And Alan Moore did that in Promethea as well,
Oh
where
yeah,
the
seems like
character,
a very Prometheus.
where like they've stepped out of time and they can see all the panels.
Yeah, j.h.williams is such a great artist for that, because he can emulate so many different kind of materials and feelings with his style.
Oh, I mean, he can pull off any trick that you want. So this is a good example of, you don't like this kind of thing.
That one's interesting because they're doing the drawing outside of the borders. I think that I like that more. Like there's some really fun tangent stuff in there, like on the last panel and the second to last panel, the kind of line through things.
This right here.
Yeah, that almost gives you an X in the middle of the page to focus your eye at. I like that.
Yeah, see, I don't have a problem with it. And I actually did this once because this is actually something I'm working on right now,
I
revising
like
a
that
little bit.
Morpheus is in there too.
Yeah, I just did I'll show it. I just did a straight to ink sketch of, not the best because I didn't sketch it out first, so the likeness isn't great, but that was for
Like
one
that.
of our patrons.
It almost gives him like a Hellraiser look with the stark black and white.
Yeah, the designs are similar with the big necks. Yeah, so I was just relettering this page actually yesterday. So this is for something I did a while ago, and then me and Sean are gonna reprint it. So I'm relettering it and stuff. And I did exactly that trick you're talking about, because I was trying to mimic like Frank Quietly, and I feel like he's someone who would piece up panels and play with time like that.
Yeah, so what I like about this that the other things are doing differently, like the reason I think this works is that you're doing the overlay of like showing the characters behind the panels. I think it creates a better illusion than just chopping up a multiple thing where
because I could cut off people.
Yeah, I think that works a lot better.
So what I was trying to do here that seemed necessary is to have them each kind of track in their own different time, like different people. These guys were staying here for longer. They only moved twice, whereas these guys, move multiple times. And that felt kind of necessary. So it's a trick I like, but I do think you're right that there are instances where it's more necessary. This one, I think, is just purely I think also sometimes from a compositional standpoint, it can just be compelling, like just having the color through here and the single color on the outside, and even maybe more. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder if also that page does the same thing of cutting off the character's head on the bottom panel there. But I wonder if you remove the word balloons, if you move the panel borders from this, if it would be harder to follow the balloons too. Like if your eye would go straight to the fourth panel as opposed to the third.
Cross and then down.
Yeah.
So there seems to me to be like good compositional reasons to do it. But I also agree that like is sometimes you can just, like on this page that we were looking at, you can just trust the audience, and it just takes a little bit more planning with the balloons and stuff, but that's a pretty easy flow to read.
That's a good excuse to do a triangle panel too. Or, I mean, sorry, the diamond panel.
What do you mean by this right here?
Yeah, I feel like that's a hard shape to fit into a page if you don't have a big open space behind it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you could compose like, this is Liam Sharp, who hopefully we're going to talk to. I've been talking to him with his Grant Morrison book. I like this too, where they're composing with the hexagonal patterns, and then they can be like flat hexagon, or they can be the isometric.
Oh yeah, I remember Scott McCloud talking about how when he was kind of pre-professional, his big invention was three-dimensional panels like this, and it was kind of like the isometric things, but there would be panels on each side, one on the top and one on each side.
I wanted to try that in Strange Death, but I didn't pull it off because I couldn't figure out exactly how to make it. But I wanted to make a character's head that was a box like this with a panel on each side, but it would be like see-through, and so you'd be seeing the panels through each other. Like basically imagine a character has a square for a head, but they have 6 different faces. Mm-hmm. And a different face on each plane, but then you would see the transparencies through each other. But I couldn't. I tried to mock it up in Photoshop, and I couldn't get it to. It just became too messy, you know.
My initial thought is if you took a character and their ability to you took like a Peanuts comic strip, and they're like, they can express themselves, but only through these 6 panels in a Peanuts comic strip, and you showed the strip initially, and then you show. And then later on, you like the reader already knows which panels they can choose from, so they can react with, like, you know, Charlie Brown saying "good grief" or Snoopy, you know, going back in his doghouse or something.
That would be interesting. Training the reader.
Yeah.
So we'll cut it off here then, because that made me think of another one that I would like to talk about on its own. It's another trick. So that's the dimensional trickery folder. I think there's a lot more. As always, we're super interested in examples you all have collected. Thanks for following along, guys.